Hello, everyone. My name is Gurja Basra, and I'm the Manager of Patient Programs, Research, and Advocacy at Lymphoma Canada. I'm proud to say that this year marks 25 years since Lymphoma Canada was founded. Before we get started with the many informative sessions we have planned for today, as well as the opening address from our CEO and the chair of this conference, I would like to begin with the story of our founding to recognize this occasion. In short, in 1998, provinces apart from each other, both Patricia Manson and Deborah Sturrett decided to act upon the realization that there was no Canadian organizations focused on lymphoma to offer resources and support to Canadian patients. Respectively, they founded the Lymphoma Research Foundation of Canada, also known as the LRFC in Vancouver, and the Canadian Lymphoma Foundation in Toronto. These organizations would eventually merge to form Lymphoma Canada as we know of it today. To dive into details, in 1997, Patricia Manson, a young mother still looking forward to raising her young children in partnership with her devoted husband, realized something was wrong. The energy that she was always able to bring to family and community events had drained away, and simply getting through her children's, and her husband's busy days had become to seem simply impossible. Nearby family, including an internist and a public health physician, persuaded her to seek medical attention, which quickly led to the diagnosis of advanced stage aggressive non-Hodgkin lymphoma, as well as a referral to the lymphoma team at the BC Cancer Centre in Vancouver. There, under the supervision of Dr. Joseph Connors, leader of the center's lymphoma tumor group, Pat began chemotherapy with a characteristic resolution, anticipating a rapid response and recovery. Initially, the treatment had went well, her energy returned, and a durable remission seemed likely. However, the good response did not last. The lymphoma returned, and within months had taken her life. Pat Manson was not one to accept discouraging news quietly. She quickly turned her disappointment at having the lymphoma relapse into a firm determination to find ways to improve not only her personal chances for care, but also the chances of other Canadians. She discovered that two organizations in the United States had recently been formed to support research into treatments for lymphoma: the Lymphoma Research Foundation of America on the East Coast and the Cure for Lymphoma Foundation on the West. After discussions with the founders of those two groups, Pat decided that Canadian patients needed a similar research supporting organization. With the encouragement of Dr. Connors and the support of her husband and family during her last few months before passing away in 1998, Pat founded the Lymphoma Research Foundation Canada, the LRFC. Initially meeting in Dr. Connors' home, Pat's husband and two physician relatives launched the LRFC. On the other hand, sharing somewhat of a similar story, in 1995, Deborah Sturrett was diagnosed with an indolent form of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, known as follicular lymphoma, when her daughters were only 9 and 12 years old at the time. Deborah lost her mother at a young age and did not want the same fate for her daughters. She initially underwent aggressive treatment, but in January 1998, she was told that the cancer had returned. This time, she was told her best option was to undergo a bone marrow transplant. At the time, the survival rate for a bone marrow transplant was not high, nor was it a proven standard of care for her subtype of lymphoma. Feeling unsure, she paused to consider the options available to ensure that she made the best decision for herself and her family. Unfortunately, at the time, there were no Canadian organizations that she could turn to that focused solely on lymphoma cancers. This made it difficult to find relevant information about the disease and available treatment options for Canadians like herself. She turned to the US to consider what could be coming to Canada in the near future. Deborah learned about new approaches to therapy from reputable resources. She knew this disease would ebb and flow. Understanding this and generally feeling well made her comfortable waiting to see if another treatment would become available. Deborah continued to learn and seek information about lymphoma. In 1998, she attended an educational conference in New York hosted by a US-based lymphoma organization. Meeting other patients and learning more about lymphoma was an eye-opening experience for her. It became clear that she might live a long and fulfilling life with her lymphoma subtype if what had been approved in the US came to Canada. For the first time since her diagnosis, she was optimistic. That inspired Deborah to launch the Canadian Lymphoma Foundation, CLF, now known as Lymphoma Canada, alongside Dr. Brent Zank and 3 of his patients, Terry Creighton, Jane Mangay, and the late David Piplato. To this day, Deborah remains an active supporter of Lymphoma Canada and advocates for lymphoma education. Since emerging, Lymphoma Canada has remained true to its mission of empowering patients and the lymphoma community through education, support, advocacy, and research. Lymphoma Canada provides free educational resources to hospitals and patients throughout the country. Year-round, we host webinars covering a variety of lymphoma topics. The organization continuously advocates for lymphoma patients and raises awareness for lymphoma cancer through various advocacy efforts. Each year, the Lymphoma Canada Research Grant is also awarded to promising Canadian research studies that have the potential to achieve positive outcomes for lymphoma patients. Speaking of which, 2023 grant recipients will soon be announced on our website. As the only Canadian organization dedicated solely to lymphoma cancers, we are proud of the impact we have made advocating for and supporting the Canadian lymphoma community. None of this would be possible without all the community support we have received over the years. Looking forward, Lymphoma Canada is certain to stay true to its mission. We will continue providing resources and support for Canadian lymphoma patients and their loved ones. We will also continue advocating for treatment options that have the possibility of allowing patients to live a life unlimited by lymphoma. With that said, I am pleased to welcome you all to our 7th annual National Patient and Caregiver Conference on Lymphoma and CLL. In the next few minutes or so, our CEO, Antonella, as well as the chair of this conference, Dr. Carrie Savage, will commence with their opening remarks.